Welcome to the May 28th, 2014 work session of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining. Please join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I don't have any announcements. Does anyone else?
Sure. I'll start off with just our weekly reminder that if you are a homeowner in the village, or anywhere in Ossining, and you would like to find out more about your home and how it can be more energy efficient, please visit energizeossining.org. Anybody, particularly if you have central air conditioning or if you recall feeling really hot and uncomfortable last summer, having your home be more energy efficient can make your home more comfortable and save you money year-round. So that's energizeossining.org. And I'm very excited to announce that on June 12th at the Ossining Public Library at 6:30, you are invited to join us for our 1-year anniversary of the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series. It's going to be a really fun one. It's Pete Seeger's Power of Song. And instead of our more traditional panel discussion, we will be having some discussion, and also we will be having live performances from musicians who have been part of a program through the Clearwater Power of Song program. And it helps people who've had some struggles to learn to deal with their struggles through music, and they will be performing, and we will be talking about the power of song, as well as celebrating so many accomplishments for the last year, and we'll be inviting, in fact, all of the panelists. Any panelist who has been part of our program for the last year will be there, and there's much more to come. So join us on June 12th, that's a Thursday at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library.
That's it?
Okay, before we move into our work session for this evening, I believe the clerk would like to call the roll so that we may move forward with one appointment under the formal activity this evening.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
Trustee DeVito?
Present.
Trustee Garrity?
Present?
Trustee Casada?
Present.
Present.
There's is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the board about the
Microphone.
Turn the mic on.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on the resolution? Letter A, appointment Deputy Corporation Counsel, whereas there is currently a vacancy in the office of Deputy Corporation Counsel, said vacancy for the term January 1st, 2013 to December 31st, 2014, having occurred upon the written resignation of the former appointee effective Friday, May 23rd, 2014. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby appoints William J. Hamilton to the office of Deputy Corporation Counsel of the Village of Ossining effective immediately, with said appointment to run concurrent with the unexpired term of such office to expire December 31st, 2014. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can I entertain a motion to adjourn into regular work session?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, that's it. Everybody go home.
Okay, moving right along. So we have a very interesting work session agenda for you this evening, and so we will move right into it. Many items, so if we can do our best to get through them as best we can. The first item is a brief discussion on the auction of surplus vehicles. Periodically, the village disposes of some of its vehicles, either through auction or sometimes if they're not retrievable, they actually go to be recycled, if you will. However, we have a number of vehicles that our village engineer, Paul Fraioli, feels have merit to go through the auction process, so I'll ask Paul to come forward and just pass on this.
Good evening.
Evening.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you saw the list, but there's 15 vehicles. Just trying to do the breakdown now. I think there's 3 rec, 5 DPW, and 7 OPD vehicles. One correction on that list I gave you, A little down on the list is a Honda Civic, not a Ford Civic. But other than that, I think the resolution we're bringing up as long as the VINs are correct. And just so we know, as the manager referenced, we do think we can make a little bit more money by going via the auction process instead of just scrapping them. Some of them we have picked clean and they might end up going the way of scrap, but we still would need to declare that surplus as we've done in the past with Corporation Council anyway. Most of these were purchased by the village previously, typically new. One, I believe, is was an evidence vehicle which we ended up taking ownership of, and 3, the gem cars were donated. So there was no actual purchase for those, but there was maintenance over the years, and they're ready to go because they're really not prudent to keep anymore. So
Okay,
that resolution will move along to the auction process.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks. The next item is an update for the board and for the,
Do we need to,
at the next
this
meeting.
will be on the next,
Right.
This will be next week.
An update to the board for the proposed Spring Street conversion, which would convert Spring Street from its present northerly direction at the intersection with Main Street to a two-way street. As part of that process, there's certain technical work that needs to be done, that has to be identified, and Paul's been working hard in identifying the appropriate party to do that work, as well as some of it would be absorbed in-house. So we are getting warmer to moving forward with this project, so I asked Paul to come in this evening and update you, and I will. I think he has a big board, but I have a small map to pass around that you all can review while he goes through the presentation. So, Paul?
if it's the same map, please show it to the camera.
Grazie.
I could probably do that to speak to, because I have a smaller version here, too, on this daily.
Okay.
That's all right.
I don't think you need to hold it forever, but,
Yeah? Okay. What you can see on the plan there is essentially taking the Spring Street one-way section, which is from from St. Paul's Place to Main Street, and converting it to two-way traffic. We went down there with consultants who were given the contract to establish a pilot schematic for us. That pilot schematic, after they took some measurements in the field, allowed for two-way traffic, as you see there, from Main Street to St. Paul's Place. It's already two-way from St. Paul's for the duration east-south. The parking would still be maintained in the corridor between St. Paul's Place and Maple Place. And the parking on the east side of Spring Street, in front of the bank, would be maintained, but we would lose the parking on the west side of Spring Street between the post office entrance and its intersection with Main Street to allow for the right turn that is parallel to the two lanes that would enter going north on Spring Street to allow for the right turn onto Maple or through traffic to Brandreth Central, or a left turn onto Main towards the waterfront.
That's okay.
There's also some striping to better handle the traffic flow that will go through that new pattern, which is depicted in the plan, starting in the upper right of the plan and going counterclockwise. You see a boulevard that's striped on Main Street. You see some bump outs to allow for pedestrians to enter the intersection a little more safely. This is a pedestrian controlled intersection, but that would allow for them to enter it and not worry about walking into oncoming traffic. And you see the crosswalks are moved around a little bit, but still in conjunction with our existing ramps through Central and onto the left side of Main Street there. The right turn coming from Main Street onto Spring Street, particularly for truck traffic, was compromised as we designed it today and started fresh. Therefore, we were forced to pull back that center lane a little bit, back south, to allow for truck traffic to negotiate that turn. And then you see the no parking depicted again on the west side of Main Street. We also have some signage that we're gonna include that shows two-way traffic ahead, which people are not used to, so we need to put those signs up. And also some no loading signage that we're gonna put up, because after doing some reconnaissance work, and also knowing the history of that corridor between St. Paul's Place and Maple Place, it is a heavy truck loading and unloading area for some of the businesses that are there. So they're gonna have to work around that, and then we will accommodate them accordingly once we go through the pilot program, talk to the manager about possibly creating some future loading zones, but we don't want to do that prematurely without going through the pilot program. And there's some enhanced one-way signage too, so people don't make the mistake of turning on St. Paul as they come south on Spring. So, all that said, by nature of it being a pilot program and a schematic and not going into construction documents, it's nice because we got the design done relatively cheaply. I mean, they came out often and produced this and had a lot of interaction for, I think, the first phase, which was $3,000. But this is what we're left with, so we're trying to buy it out separately. And I'm waiting on a proposal from a traffic signal contractor that has, where we can piggyback the Westchester County labor contract that they have, and they are also going to subcontract for us the striping component of that work. The purchasing of the signs we're going to do in-house with one of our sign vendors, and we'll probably end up doing the installation of those signs in-house as well. So that needs to be coordinated. I don't have pricing for you yet, but I believe it's, within what we originally discussed, which I think the pilot program was going to cost us less than $20,000
Okay.
between materials and supplies and labor. So I'm hoping that's where we come to. That's the goal anyway. And then we're going to leave it in place once we get it implemented for a few months, maybe even into the winter, and then consider it as a capital program to discuss at the end of the year when we talk about the 2015 budget.
What do you need from us tonight?
I think it was really just an update, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Good.
I do have a quick question, Paul. You said we are losing some parking spaces. Do you happen to know how many?
4.
Four.
We're losing 4,
Okay.
but I would draw your attention to, I think last week you had a resolution to create 2 on Central Avenue, so the 2 metered spots that are going there. And,
So it's a net loss of 2.
yeah.
No, we put 2 more in the back.
Oh, you put 2 in the back, so it's...
No.
Yeah.
Well, the meters, the
there's-
parkings are there. It's just the meter portion, and then the 2 other ones that we add in. We only losing, if anything, we'd be losing 2.
2 metered, but if you do a net on additions, we did add, I'm sorry, the manager, refresh my memory behind, we can do it. We added
Correct.
2.
The other 2,
So you got it in the back, so it's net neutral.
Not quite.
not quite.
Okay. Why is
No,
it?
because the 2 meters, they're already parked there. We would just charge them for the parking meter itself.
Ah, okay, got
So those
it.
parking spaces were there already.
Okay.
We didn't create anything. We did create 2 parking spaces behind.
So it's a
on
net,
those sides.
so it's a net loss of
we're
2.
losing 2.
Okay.
In a way.
Yeah.
So I guess, in order to adequately advise the public, we'd like to put out some signs and stuff like that, and I'd like to try to give them 30 days' notice. So I think that would be helpful for people to know that it's, it's just a good thing to keep everybody involved and involved in the process. So what I'd kind of like to do is if we get some numbers from Paul in the next week or a couple of days, maybe I can email it to you if it's within the realm of reality. Maybe we can give it a green light to sort of go ahead. Otherwise, we had to come back again in 2 weeks. But if it's within the budget, it's going to be between 10 and 20,000. I can just send it to you. You can let me know what you think.
I'd also like to suggest that when the week that we roll out this change, that we assign an officer from the police department to be there for the first few days, just in
Just to keep
case.
an eye on.
To keep an, so
Or
that,
trustee.
yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, John, you're not working. You can do that. We'll give you a nice yellow vest. It'll be lovely.
Get some training for that.
It's easy. We'll give you a whistle too.
One of the signs that we're going to buy out as part of this implementation, I should have pointed out earlier, we do have an on or about sign that we hope to post down there in at least one spot, so people drive through it. We just have to get our arms around the price point.
Okay.
And then we go from there.
Now,
I'll leave this, I guess, down in the manager's office, so if you
yeah.
guys want.
Paul, is there any way that you can get those as a PDF or as a JPEG, and we can put that in our website and inform the people as well that we are doing this change?
I do have that, and I
Okay.
can send it.
That'll be
I'm not
great.
sure, maybe we'll have some of the more mundane information removed.
Yeah, no, of course, I mean, you can always, we were just needing like the map and some text attached to it, describing a little bit what's going on, so we can have that in our
It's
website
really
too.
good, like, almost like a press conference, I think, you know, that we need to do something that, where we're gonna make an announcement, put it on the web blast.
Yeah.
You know, really make it.
Yeah, I mean, something dramatic, you know, it's a big deal, and so we're thinking of banners or big signs. I mean, these are going to be
Marching band.
posted, these will be posted for the driving traffic, but something big that people really, you know, gets it to their attention, because it will be a big change. I think it'll be a good change, but you want people to know about
We
it.
could put, we
When
could,
are you thinking of,
Well, like I said, that's why I'm asking for sort of a yellow light, that if we get the information, we can share it and keep it moving, so we don't have to put it over for another 2
just
weeks.
wondering if we can do a big splash at the village fair.
Yeah,
You'll
yep.
have 15,000 people there. 10,
Well, hopefully, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I think you're probably, because we're already up to what, the 28th of, so you're probably not going to look at it until sometime in July now, so, you know.
We
but
could
yeah,
borrow a
Village Fair.
flatbed from Bob's Towing and put the high school marching band on it and have it be the first thing that makes that turn.
I just would like to,
And a trustee.
can I just clarify,
Direct.
because I hadn't realized that at this stage, that we would be introducing the crosswalk, at least in a painted form, that cuts directly from what is essentially now Vaza to the, making that triangle so you don't have to go Central and Brandwidth. You can just go from Vaza to the other side of Maine. That is, we're painting that, but we won't have the blinking crosswalk signs to go with it at this stage. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
Correct.
Correct.
That was, because I believe that
Okay.
was part of the.
Well, there's some timing changes that they're gonna do
Yeah.
some head signs, and we're gonna move the heads a little bit to accommodate the
Oh.
walk, I believe is the intent.
Oh, okay.
But there are no head signs on the Bazak corner at all,
Uh,
in any direction.
Okay.
let me check,
Yeah.
I don't want to.
No, they're not.
Just looked at it.
No, that was part of the console, I remember that. because
Okay.
It was just, for what I remember when the presentation was, it's like it was a flow. It was a
Right.
constant flow.
Right.
And they were talking about
So-
making the light as you come up Central a trigger as cars come up, but that is not changing. We're not changing any of the timing of the lights at this stage because this is just the pilot. Is that correct?
There is some timing changes, but there's no hardware changes with the exception
Okay.
of the pedestrian. I believe we might be moving that, but I'm not sure.
Are we introducing the trip on Central Avenue at this
That's-
time,
yeah.
or not yet? Okay.
That would be a hardware change? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it'll get even better if the pilot goes well, is what we're saying, right? Okay.
Okay, great, so we'll, thank you for that, and we'll keep you posted.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul, you can stay with us just for a minute. So the next item is sort of an update on the discussion with respect to the tennis court lighting. The original project, I think, was anticipated to be about $25,000, $26,000. I believe and please correct me if I'm misstating any of this, because I'm pitching for the rec department, but, oh, are they? Oh, I didn't see Henry came in late. Okay, Henry, why don't you come forward, and you want to speak to this update on I'll just summarize what I know, and then I'll turn it to Henry. Basically, the expectation was, I guess, that the tennis group was going to raise $13,000. They, in fact, raised $12,000. So they're looking for the balance to come from the Village of Ossining, and I believe it's approximately $27,000. So approximately $15,000 would come from the village, presumably from those funds that are designated in lieu of parkland. So,
Yeah.
Henry, if you want to comment further or whatever. So I think, in terms of the dollars first, we're trying to settle on, if that's agreeable to you. The thought was to take the $15,000 from the in lieu of parkland monies.
Do we
And
need a
in terms of-
resolution?
I'm sorry?
We need a resolution for next
I
week?
think they're going to establish a capital project
Oh, okay.
and
That should-
provide for that transfer. In terms of the actual work itself, I have to defer to, I don't believe council has settled with the treasurer's office yet.
had a chance to talk about the authorization.
So I guess you're basically authorizing the funding, and it's for council and the treasurer's
So
office.
we're
to
rolling
work
back
out
to
that.
12 from this chart for the tennis group.
that correct?
They're
Yes.
donating 12,000, my understanding is,
Okay.
and you would make up the difference. It should be approximate.
Yeah,
That's great.
good.
Make it out to Bob, to Ryan. No.
So it's sort of an update. So in the same vein, if you want to, sort of a dialogue was brought up on the use of in lieu of parkland funds, and I sent you all sort of a summary email, and we itemized those items that were sort of on the table and, that could be coming up in the near future. We know what we have on hand in terms of in lieu of parkland monies. We may expect something at some time in the future, but it's nothing that you can really bank on at this time. So I guess there was some discussion of the trustees that you wanted to have discussion on this item, so I'll turn it back to you. And Henry's here as well to answer.
Yeah, I had requested that we take a look at this because I feel as though when we made the decision to commit the parkland funds for the extension of the pathway, that we didn't have a complete understanding of what our other commitments were, and even to the extent that were the in lieu of parkland funds even appropriate for the pathway. And as Richard pointed out in his analysis, if we look at all the potential and current commitments, we'll have a deficit in the fund. And I don't think I would have made the commitment to do the pathway if I had known about where all these other monies had to go. And so from my perspective, I think we need to revisit this. I think we need to talk about what our commitments are and understand what they are, because it's not acceptable to have a situation where we have potential commitments that would and we wouldn't have the money to make good on it. And I think one of the things that I know I didn't understand was the notion that we would be using the in lieu of parkland funds for the dock, and there are also some other proposals and things that had been discussed at the Rec Advisory Board, specifically the gym floor, specifically the lights that we had talked about in the gym, and also the bathrooms at the park. So, my concern here is that there's not enough money in lieu of parklands to do it. I'm not convinced. Obviously, I'd like to do everything, but I don't think it's all coming from that fund, and we have to make sure that we have enough money in that fund to meet our current and future obligations.
The importance of having the money in the fund for the dock is that if we get the New York State grant that we've applied for, we have to have that money to match that grant. It was erroneously reported in the press that we lost a grant because of this, but it's not true. We haven't lost a grant at all. So I agree with you. This is problematic if we are going to have anything left in that to do all of the other things that
Well,
we're
I guess
planning to do.
my thing is that, I want to make good on the commitments we've done so far. I think we have to figure out, where we're going with this and how we're funding it. And as far as I'm concerned, the pathway needs to wait until we sort out the financial elements of this thing. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we need to talk about process too, because all the stakeholders involved in this needed to have been able to weigh in on this. The board thought they had, and apparently they had not. We have to fix that. The other thing to remember is we are coming into a time of great austerity. Between the tax cap and the 1% a year reduction in the tax levy each year for the next 3 years that the government is imposing on us, the state government, all the things we want to get done, and there's a lot of things we want to get done to make Ossining better, and our staff and our departments are working really hard to get this done and to get it done efficiently and cost effectively. There's not going to be a lot of money next year and the year after and the year after that. So we have to be very careful to make sure that we get as much done as we can now, and at the same time make sure we keep enough aside to meet future commitments. It's a very difficult thing, and I'm glad I'm not Richard. or Tom, because the two of them have to figure this out for us. And it's very, very difficult. It's a fine line we walk. So we have to revisit this, and I guess we should, put it on the agenda for the next meeting to talk about it some more?
So why don't we just actually talk about what the information that we have in front of us tonight, which is what I shared with you. At the end of December 31/13, you had approximately $741,000, and that was after deducting the $101,000. So that was already covered for the potential, the community center deck. So that part is covered. You then deducted another $160,000 for playground and approximately $14,000 for the tennis lights, left a balance of $567,000. So that's what is in place at this moment, $567,000. The numbers that I have been given showed the floor with a potential project of $55,000 to $70,000. The lights had just recently come up, and I had a discussion with Henry the other day, and that could be $26,000 to $30,000. The Vets Park bathrooms, again, we don't have the numbers on these, but it's approximately $100,000. And the dock itself, we have good reason to believe that you will get the grant on that, which means that your match would be $308,000, and the abbreviated pathway was approximately $354,000. So when you deducted all those, you needed to come up with additional funding for about $290,000. So, unless there's some reason to delay, it's really, decisions have to be made because the work is ongoing in the Kilbrook. And, I think if you can possibly prioritize these projects in terms of which ones you think are most important, it would be helpful in order to move forward.
Can I point out that I agree with everyone that these are all very worthy projects. And I also want to clarify for anybody watching that when we talk about the tax cap and austerity, that has to do with the general fund. And we have not in any way discussed spending any real estate taxes or general fund money on any of these projects. This is all recreation parkland funds that we've been talking about, the in lieu of parkland fees that we collect.
Very true.
As far as the timing, my concern with the extension of the pathway is that if we do not do it now, it will not get done. If we do it now, it will be making incredibly efficient use of all of the infrastructure that is currently in place because we had to do the sewer relining. If we do not do it now, anytime it is done, it will be dramatically more expensive for it to get done, which means it will probably never be done by village funds, or if it is, then it will cost us a lot more money to do it, wherever that money were to come from. And if we were to ask a developer to do it, that's a lot to negotiate with the developer for that space. That said, I also was reading one of our old emails about the dock, and perhaps Valerie or Lori Lee can enlighten us on our relationship with Ginsburg as far as the docks, because for the last phase, he paid for the matching funds.
Yeah, the grant that we submitted last year, Ginsburg was going to pay for the matching funds through design, permitting, and engineering.
Okay.
And we passed a resolution saying that we were going to pay for the construction, our match for the construction costs. We were awarded the design, permitting, and engineering component of the grant. So that Ginsburg is going to take on in partnership with the Village of Austin. They're going to match that. And we are now submitting for the construction of the dock, which would be the Village.
Got it.
Just a question going back to the previous version of the abbreviated walkway. What was the difference in price? Do you remember?
That's not me.
No, it's not.
The original alternate was 578,000 and change, and then the reduced alternate was 3,000 and change. That's the corporate
Thank you. Now, somebody in the press today, somebody said that it's our bridge to nowhere. What I think people don't understand is this is only part. This project isn't finished. this is a section of it that we have a huge opportunity because of the construction we have to do on the Kill now to get done, and that it would continue once there's a developer for the piece of property owned by the village that's connected near there, and that we don't want to do anything further than the spot on this plan now, because it would affect what a developer can build. Is that correct?
I guess the best way to try and answer that is to maybe restate what I said 2 weeks ago with regard to the alternate. After walking down there with the manager, we wanted to do a few things. We wanted to reduce the scope, try to get the biggest bang for less money. We wanted to pull ourselves out of where the path ends now, which is the steps on Central Avenue, but if you did the extension, you're still presently on a to-be procured easement from one of our private parcels, so we wanted to pull out our private property easement and establish that easement. And we wanted to get under the bridge and onto the other side of the water, so if and when a developer or the village or someone else ever wanted to extend that path, they wouldn't have to go through the logistics of bypassing flow of the stream and that type of mobilization cost
Right.
to do the extension. But at the same time, we looked at the larger components of the alternate, which were the 50-foot structural span and the abutments for that span, and we eliminated that because we didn't jump back over to the other side, because we don't know what these developers or us or anybody else is going to do with the parcels down below. So we felt that you would still get the aesthetic of walking underneath the Central Avenue Bridge, which is also a nice architectural component, and take you out to what we envisioned as a turnaround. It's not the beautiful vista right now, but we're just trying to think ahead and put that in place at a reduced cost and still pull ourselves out of the logistically challenging components of this project.
Okay,
And that's
well
what we
said.
said last week.
Yeah.
So maybe to segue to some comments that have been made, maybe Henry, would you mind coming forward and give us your opinion in terms of priorities of what the rec department needs and where you would see funds going?
Didn't have a chance to bring this to the Recreation Advisory, but as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Mayor, there are a lot of projects that this board has already made commitments to, and I think John Codman mentioned that. Those are projects that the public has been asking for the last 15 years. Things like Veterans Park bathrooms and the community center lights in the gym have gone on fire recently. The fire department had to come down, put them out, and take them down. The deck obviously was 7 years ago when the pool was put in. So, projects that we're talking about are things that we've been getting requests from the public for at least 10 years, if not more than 10 years. Some of those we've already made commitments to people to take care of, like the lights in the gym floor and the Veterans Park bathrooms. I think even Valerie had mentioned that she's been there, and Ingrid, I think, has been there with it. There's a lot of people that use the bathrooms at Veterans Park that have requested for many, many years that that project be taken out. So I'm going to guess if it went to the Recreation Advisory Board and they looked at the cost and the money that was going out and the projects that they would put on the list to prioritize, and while the walkway underneath the Central Avenue Bridge is wonderful, I'm going to guess that they would probably put that not high on the list compared to the other projects that they'd like to see done.
Can I ask another question related to the two gymnasium questions? There have been leaks in the roof, and there were some issues about perhaps going up and cleaning drains and whatever.
The maintenance department at the community center has taken care of the leaks, and in the last two storms, we have not had one single leak.
Excellent. That's what I was hoping to hear.
$1,800 and solved.
I was hoping to hear that, because that would have, if we were going to do the floors and the lights, we would have had to do something about the roof as well under other circumstances.
Carlos, our East #1 custodian,
Certainly
went up on the
is.
roof with a couple guys, and he has stopped all the leaks.
Good.
For a grand total of materials of $1,800.
That's terrific.
The reality is, though, that everything the rec department wants to do is pretty small numbers compared to the dock and
Yeah.
the greenway. It's the Kilbrook walkway extension and the dock that tip us over, because they're both over 300,000, and that's the amount that we're going over. So
I think the dock is an absolutely crucial thing. Otherwise, we might as well not apply for the grant. And the dock, I think, for the future of the village, for the ability for larger boats to dock here, for more transient boats to dock here, because we don't really have access for transients except occasionally at Chatham, this space. This is the future of this village is looking out over the Hudson in many ways, and I think it will entice more people here if we have that dock. I think the dock's crucial, and I think giving up the possibility of it is just, I think, inappropriate and wrong.
I agree.
Go ahead, Manuel.
So, Paul, let's go back to you. So what's Plan B at this point? Or Plan C, or D, or E? Since that you heard the concerns that the board has, you heard the concerns that Henry has as well. What can we do, or how do you see this having something there? And I don't think it's a bridge to nowhere. I just think it's a landing area. It's a turnaround, like you call it. And I do agree. I think it's something that eventually something else is going to be added to that part. So we have to be prepared for something to happen there. Before, we weren't getting the money from parks, money, so to speak. Where were we getting that money from?
Sewer.
I'm sorry, bonded.
Well,
So-
through the sewer fund, though, right? It was-
So-
No, only
no,
the
no.
sewer.
The alternate's never been included with the sewer fund money because it has no relationship to the repair of the sewer pipe itself.
I'd like to ask Tom where we can find an additional $290,000, just because it's fun to ask him that and put him on the spot.
But before Tom asks, would you mind, or have you any thoughts, any ideas, or anything within that to see what can we do, or how can we make this happen?
I would say that everything I said about the alternate and how we would bring it back, we would just bring it back to where it stands now, and everything would be at a later date. We can do the administrative things relative to the alternate, like
Yeah, if they're private property rights, we can certainly acquire those ahead of time in anticipation of a structure existing. The difference between the existing easement and the expanded easement we would need in order to proceed with the structure is de minimis. So we could acquire the necessary meets and bounds to accommodate the project at a later date, if that's what you need to do.
as far as everything else, we did proceed with, soliciting the change order from the contractor. So administratively, it's in place, so, something changes in a month or 2 or 3, and the contractor's still mobilized in there, and we can still negotiate the same or better price.
And keeping in mind that the end date on this project is the end of September, and that's by order of the DEC. So we have until September 30th as a drop dead date.
And then again, as the reviewer of the planning board documents with regard to site components that I do with Valerie, that's one of the things that we can try to incorporate into a potential developer site plan along with, all the other things we look at. It's just that is, in our numbers, maybe not their numbers, but in our numbers, that's an additional $353,000 that we'd be asking for as or that he'd be going to us for a density bonus.
And it would be more, wouldn't it? Because, as Victoria said,
Well, again, I know your thought there, but those are our dollars. Sometimes municipal dollars tend to be a little more inflated because of the relative insurances and administration that goes along with those construction dollars.
we want cheaper dollars.
Well, the developer may be able to.
Developer dollars are cheaper than municipal dollars. Ah. Interesting. I always get paid with cheaper dollars somehow. I don't know how that works for everybody else. But
So the design is there, and that is a big component, and the mindset is there. So I think to that extent, I think everybody in this room tonight is on the same page that it's a good idea. It's just how and when we get there is really not up to me.
Thank you, Paul.
Without the pathway, if we did the other four, that's at least 509,000 and at most 528.
It leaves you with about, if you did everything.
40,000.
but That leaves you with about 60,000 in the rec
Yeah.
fee.
Right.
Yeah.
At this point, your options are just go with the original contract to complete the sewer work. You have the original option A, which would take you back up to Central Avenue, which was 570,000, was it, 80? Or you have this option, which was, a shortened version, which was 350-something thousand. So it's basically, those are the three options. Really, I don't believe you can pull it back any further, right? I don't,
Again, I think where we took it was prudent. It took us onto the other side of the brook. It took us away from the bridge to give you that, turnaround capability on that elevation.
I would love it if we could find the money to do this, but if we can't, we can't.
So, I'm sorry, Henry, you were going to say something?
I was going to say that having looked at the plans with Mr. Lyons the other day and looking at I guess my original vision of what I thought this was, walking from the community center down through the Kill, and I've walked there a few times when just a pair of boots and hiking down the stream. I think people are going to get the effect that I had envisioned, right? The people going down through that ravine, and it's quiet and it's peaceful down there and it's a nice space, and the walkway that's being built there from the community center down to the exit point going up on the Central Avenue would give that. Would it be nice to go through the bridge and down all the way to the waterfront? Sure, but I think that for those people who are looking for that experience, they'll get that with what you have right there.
With what we have, would that give us a turnaround at the bottom? So that,
We'd have to,
little
you
changes.
already have ADA turnaround capabilities by nature of the width of the path.
Right.
That's, the wheelchair.
Right.
Can actually make the radius, even if we don't put an actual turnaround. What you wouldn't have is the egress ADA ability at Central Avenue via wheelchair. I mean, you could.
They have to go all the way back.
Yeah.
But they'd have to do that right now anyway.
And that would cost
Right,
no
right.
more than what we are currently spending.
It's all out of the sewer fund.
Right, that's
Right.
when we came back and asked for those last month.
Right, yeah.
That's
Right.
what we have the ability to accomplish now.
Yeah. I think that's where we have to be. I don't see how we can spend all of this money and then all of this money. I think the other four projects are crucial. This one is glorious.
What does Tom say? He's the guy with the bag of money. It's a small bag of money, and we're apparently making it a lot smaller.
It's a change purse now, Bob.
It's what?
Change purse?
It's not kind of a change purse. It's not a silk purse, just a sow's ear.
Kind of on you, Tom.
With all due respect, I work directly for Richard. Richard is the village manager, he's budget officer. We have the audit report coming out, hopefully within a couple of weeks, if we talk about the village's finances. I think the choice has been very clear. It either comes out of the general fund by including it in next year's budget, or it comes from fund balance, or it comes from a bond issue if you're going to pay for this with general fund money.
Is it fiscally responsible for us to take the $290,000 that we're short from somewhere else? And what kind of liability financially would it create that would make it a bad idea to try and do? Because that's what I'm looking for here. If we can find another solution to get all of it done, that would be ideal. But if we can't, then we can't. And I think this is now, at this point, a financial decision. Given all of the resources that are available, and given the obligations that we have, and the future limitations coming up that we have to deal with, is it even possible?
I want to add something to that, Bob, and I think it answers the question to some degree. If we spend all the money in the fund, and then we bond some more money, then in case we need to do something else next year or the year after, we'll be bonding again, or taking it from fund balance again. Or it'll be budgeted, but you have just stated that we will have, and actually the 1% diminution in the levy is not next year, it's the 3 years after that.
Okay.
Next year is a freeze from this year, as what the governor wants. So I think it just gets us into more and more and more trouble if we spend all of the money that's in the in lieu of park fund.
Valerie?
We are, much of the board is now leaning toward not doing the Greenway extension that we approved last week because we need to have the money available if we should get this grant for the dock, which would pretty much empty out the fund. When will we find out if that grant is approved?
We're supposed to be, we were told that the CFAs are due June 16th and that the governor anticipates making his announcement early fall.
So early fall, which would be,
Too
this sewer line project would have been completely removed by then. So we could have lots of money left in the Parkland Fund should the state not do what we anticipate. Just saying.
We
This
could.
needs to happen now. The dock doesn't need to be paid for with Parkland funds. Have we even asked the person who owns that property where the dock comes right into? Does Ginsburg have any desire? Does
It's
he have a?
ours. It's not Ginsburg, it's ours.
I know Ginsburg's going to be working with us, like, that's what we're getting the contracts now from the state. And so part of my discussion tonight with this board was dealing with the CFA grant for the dock, is that, so that everybody understands that once we get that contract in from the state, the concept is we're going to be dealing with design, permitting, and engineering of the dock.
That's for the grant we already have.
We have that
Correct,
grant.
the grant we already have.
That's like $21,000 or something. We're not talking about the $300,000 grant at all.
No, that's correct. And the state, what I have been told, the state likes to have those grants in phases. We submitted the whole kit and caboodle last year. They took our grant and said, we're gonna allow you to have phase one this round. And then they said, you know, more or less, they know the grant is coming. I've talked to a number of people up there. I can't guarantee anything, but they clearly have given the village or the money, the funds to do design, permitting, and engineering.
I am also in favor of having this dock extension, and I understand the great benefit that it would be to our community. And we've been talking about it for a long time. And we might not get the grant for it. And this is our opportunity to do a major portion of what we would need to connect Water Street to the downtown. So I am not in favor, and I feel I may be in the minority here, but I am not in favor of undoing the approval that we did last week, which I think is a very fiscally responsible thing to do.
I think under other circumstances, you'd be right, that if there were no caps and no diminution of 1% of the levy in the future, and we knew that Hudson Step, for instance, was coming online, and there would be more money to replenish the fund so we could go on doing the things we need to do, I think you'd be right. But I don't think you're right now.
There's too many ifs.
Yeah, I don't think you're right now. Hudson Step's been in the works since 2007.
Yeah, they presented last night again.
Yeah, and it looks better than it has looked for 4 years now. Valerie, does it not?
That's
Yeah.
correct. But, I mean, they anticipate, or ideally, they said they wanted to be done their approval sometime in the winter, and then, you know, but I don't know for sure if they're gonna do their approvals and then look for financing. I don't know if they have the financing in town. I did send over, there's, you know, we have 3137 Spring Street, and we have 25 Seaport Road. They're the ones that I feel that are most possibly on target for collecting rec funds this year. But even then, if every unit gets counted, it's only gonna be about like $150,000 in rec funds.
So do we have a sense of the board of?
I'd like to say something.
Yes.
So, just as a follow-up to what I said before, I'm not comfortable, committing in lieu of parkland funds for this path. Just because I feel as though those funds are already committed to the point where there's only going to be a residual balance of $60,000 after we have expended everything with the potential or future commitments. I don't think we should put ourselves in a position where we have to make the decision right now. I want to do some more exploring. I want to figure out what our other potential options might be. And I'd like to get the audit report. I'd like to get some more financial information. I said when we passed this last week that one of the reasons that we want to do this now is what Victoria said, which is that it's not going to get any cheaper if we do it now. That's the
If we don't do it,
If we
we
do
do
it
it
later.
after.
I'm just saying, and
Yeah.
we have to act now, okay, if we're going to do this. I mean, and when I say act now, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, you know, let's give this some time and start to explore some things and see what other tax collection comes in. Let's see what other opportunities come our way before we decide to shelve this thing. So that's, I would ask that we not make a decision one way or the other on it right now, that we give it a little bit more time.
I agree with
think we
John.
have to make a decision about the dock, because we have to have that application into the
Well, I don't think there's
CFA.
I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, that's not what we're
That-
discussing.
That's
We're
not
discussing
what,
the
that's
path.
not what I'm talking about.
All right.
I mean,
All right.
that money's already committed.
Good.
What I'm saying is, let's not make a decision about the pathway. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, let's
Okay.
allow some more time to pass and to see what other options.
Can I just,
Can we check with Paul and make sure that's feasible?
can I just
He's
follow
much
up
as
and,
said that before.
here,
I
what
mean, you know.
what I'd like to suggest is when all the discussion came up on Friday, and I saw the emails and whatnot, I contacted Paul and I told him to hold off on taking any action that you had approved previously until you had an opportunity to look at it again tonight. While you're doing your additional investigation, see what other information that you might come up with, why don't you let me meet with Paul and talk to him, and let's find out the absolute drop dead date.
Okay.
You know, when you have to decide,
So-
and then at least you'll have a window to back to work
Yeah,
against.
so we're going to, I think we should hold off on making a decision this evening.
On that one,
On that one.
On the one item,
Yes.
yeah.
I think the other things are already approved. You know, the only thing that's in question is the path. Am I wrong? Because I'm,
Extension.
yeah, I don't want to speak for the whole board,
Well, and we haven't heard from New York State if we will have the grant
for the dock.
for the dock, but we need
Well,
to
we
hold the
won't
money
hear.
just in case.
we won't hear.
Right.
Right. But as far as what's in question, that's not a question we can answer.
Yes, yes.
And-
Well,
and-
well said.
Yeah, no, I agree with definitely Victoria and John in regards to, we need to have this. I think it's a great piece of part of the puzzles that we want to integrate the downtown with the waterfront and bring it back. So I think it's essential for us to do this. It's essential for us to be fiscally responsible in how we spend the money as well. So we definitely need to think about what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be doing this. So I think we definitely need a little more time. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll try to bring you some dates back that you can continue to investigate in the interim, okay?
Thank you, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. The next item is an update on the public and the board will recall that the consultant was engaged to look at the Market Square possibility, came in with some schematics in terms of what may be done there or may not be done there, depending on the board's ultimate decision, in terms of the volume that might be accommodated for redevelopment of those parcels. As part of that, the board made perfectly clear, and the public indicates that they would like to have an opportunity to participate to a greater extent. So we asked our planner, Valerie Monastra, and our manager downtown, Ingrid Richards, has been working on bringing forward some proposals for you to consider to take the next step in this particular situation in order to allow the public to come forward and also to vet the possibility. So if I can turn it over to Ingrid and Valerie.
Evening?
So Ingrid and I both have two different types of public participation concepts to bring forth to this board. So we'll both speak as to the two different types, and this board will then help guide us as to which one you prefer to move forward with, and we'll open the discussions there. Did you want to talk about Project for Public Spaces?
Okay, so we have Project for Public Spaces, and the board might remember that the last time we were in front of you, we discussed potentially looking at how the public space and the retail space would connect with each other to create a dynamic area for the community and visitors. And we identified the company Project for Public Spaces. At that time, they gave us a proposal for between $20,000 and $40,000 to do the work, to have the workshops, to get the community engaged. We did some work with them, and we now have a proposal for approximately $13,000 to, create the workshops and create a plan, prepare a memo from those workshops, and they will show us how to implement that plan. And hopefully this could potentially be put in an RFP so that the developer understands exactly what our thoughts are and what we would like. We also have an option to potentially have a landscape architect work with us, which would probably be most preferable if we are handing a plan to the developer to show to them exactly what the village wants. And I did speak to Robert Lane earlier this week from the Regional Plan Association, and he noted that he probably wouldn't be, his firm or himself would not be the best company to work on this particular project at this time. If you were looking for someone to do what DRG did for us, then that's where his firm would have the technical expertise. But he did note some very interesting concepts that I'd like to share with the board. He believed that not only do you look at the new development when crafting the public space, but you should look at the existing development so that it looks, so you're creating one space. So when people come down, the Vazas Salon side, you have to ensure that you're bringing everything together, the streets, the sidewalks, the lighting. You want to make it as attractive as possible. So we should look into ensuring that it's one space, and that whoever is creating that plan would look at the entire environment. So that was good, and he did say get a good landscape architect and provide the developer with a plan. So these are the ideas that we came up with. He was helpful in that, and Project for Public Spaces, as many of you know, is a very well-respected company that would provide us with a quality product for the community, and it would be a worthwhile investment in this project for the village.
Okay. Valerie?
All right, so I contacted Pace University Language Law Center, and I explained to them and I took the public participation from a slightly different angle. So while Ingrid's focuses primarily on the public space and the interface, this one would also take a look at the public space, some of the architecture, and the site plan components. Now, it would be clearly in a very less detailed format than what Project for Public Spaces would provide to the village. What this one would really deal with is Pace would go back and take a look and do a technical review and a quick assessment report of what was already done by a downtown revitalization group, because when they do the public meetings, they said they want to be able to, when the public engages them and questions them on the particular reports and the analysis that DRG did, they want to be able to back that up by saying, yes, we reviewed it, and we also agree, or these are the different components that we think maybe could be tweaked, that type of thing, and engage the public that way. Their concept is to hold maybe between 1 to 2 public workshops, and again, they would focus on, the general topics would focus on the public space, architecture, and the site plans. And then from there, they would take the public input and analysis from the center staff and look towards providing a final report of recommendations to the village board that can ultimately be worked into a request for proposal for that site. So theirs, again, would be more or less taking public comment, but, public comment that's guided, based upon the original DRG report and then their analysis. And so that ultimately, in the end, the RFP reflects a little bit more about what the public would like to see in that space.
Thank you.
Comments, Bob?
How many public meetings would the proposal that Ingrid brought up?
Public spaces.
One.
Just one? Yeah.
It
1 to 2.
says,
Am I mistaken?
It has been my experience with things in Ossining that people don't show up often, that we are often speaking to empty chairs. And I think that we need to somehow have at least 2 or 3 public opportunities for people in order to engage the public. Because if we have a public meeting and the same 3 people that show up for everything show up, then it really isn't going to be effective, and the report that we get is going to be skewed. So I'd be interested in hearing the ways each of these 2 groups would deal with that problem, because it is a challenge that we face all the time here.
When I held, when we did public workshops a few years ago, this was back in I think 2009, 2010, it was sort of with the concept of the old DPW site, the Main Street site, and then 200 Main Street to sort of get the community geared up for a request for proposal to go out. We did something where we actually started advertising for people to sign up to show up for the workshops, and we ended up getting 50 people out that
Which is great.
evening for the
I remember
workshop.
that.
So it was something that I think, people, I think that helped engage the community a little bit, because they felt that, if they signed up for it and their name's on there, then they're gonna show up for it, as opposed to, well, is everything working good this evening, is it raining outside, maybe I will, maybe I won't. So, so there are some tactics we can, employ to try to engage the public and have them come out.
Our experience with the comprehensive plan was that we got people out.
Right.
I remember one incredibly crowded meeting at Park School with people sitting on elementary school chairs on transportation. It was only on transportation.
I remember that.
The original, and it was because we did a lot of advertising.
We did.
And I think that behooves us to do. That's not part of any contract that we have with them. And also, there is no saying that if they do 1 or 2 meetings, that we can't do the 3rd. That, Valerie's not busy.
Yeah, she doesn't have enough to do, right?
But it is true that we can do follow-up meetings, and if there are questions left unanswered, or people who want to participate in the process who can't make it to those meetings, there's also written, there are other forms of communication. They can come in and meet with us.
Okay, I just have great concerns about making sure that all the stakeholders get a chance to weigh in.
Sure.
It's one of the things that we have been working harder on, but we need to continue to strive to be better.
These are both really good bunches of people making great proposals. The PPS, which is not the same as Phillips, Price, and Shapiro, which is also called PPS, is very reputable. Is a very reputable firm, and I think the question that we asked before you came back with these was, do we want to only look at the public spaces, or do we want to look at the public spaces and the other areas? And this is one of each proposal. But the public space one, the PPS one, is, I think, going to be much more detailed and much more focused. I know that the work that the Pace University people do is excellent work, but it is less focused.
Yeah.
Although I prefer to have a very focused one on the whole thing, if I had to take a choice right now, I would take the focused one on what I can get. But I'm concerned about that if we only deal with the public space, then we're going to end up with a lot of public space and not much.
Well, what we want to do is not end up with a lot of public space. We want to make sure that it's a high-quality
Quality,
public space.
sure.
And what we don't want is to have a big space, because I was speaking to Mr. Lane, and he said it looked a little big. We want to ensure that it's a high-quality space that's well-programmed, and that takes a lot of effort. It's not something that just happens. It takes a lot of planning, and their skill set is premier. And if we're going to invest additional dollars in the project before we go out to RFP, this would potentially be this would be an excellent product for the village.
I agree.
I would definitely be leaning toward the public spaces. I don't need anybody else to review the work that we've all reviewed so many times as the first step. I would like to see more than one public meeting, and I'm concerned that if we just simply hold additional meetings where people are allowed to just say things to us, they won't be incorporated. The point of having them come and help prepare well and take information from the public and help facilitate these discussions is that they will then reflect that back to us in a manner that is useful for us as we develop the RFP. So I would want to make sure that we really have a rich, vibrant public outreach, and that's not that people can't weigh in otherwise, but that's valuable enough, that's what we need to be able to be doing this thoroughly. And I would also want to be sure that we are incorporating any of our councils, commissions, and committees of volunteers in the community, whether they're dealing with historical preservation or with the arts, any of the groups that we're liaisons to, and anybody in any of the other entities in the schools or other groups that are related to us. And I don't know enough about how they would be conducting the placemaking workshop, if that's going to be one big room or if it's going to be broken into small focus groups that might be focusing on business or on the arts or on history or affordable housing. You know, there's a lot of ideas of a lot of different lenses to be looking at this space through.
Yes, and I can have them provide us with more detail as to how they will conduct that workshop. And then if we want to provide, we can start creating a list of people who we should send a letter to, communicate with, and everyone's on board with, this is the list of the people we want to communicate, the stakeholders we want to communicate with, and we can do that.
When we did the comprehensive plan, we sent out a questionnaire, which is how we got the, 1,400 responses or something like that, which is astounding. That is not the normal reaction. But it did start the ball rolling of getting people to the events. So that first charrette, which was large group, then broken into small groups, then back at the end to the large group, with the leaders of those small groups reporting back to everyone and giving the opportunity to comment, was an extraordinary experience for so many people who stayed with us through the more specific events, the transportation event and the waterfront event.
Right. I know that this is a crucial development, but it is only one development, and I don't want the scope of it to go beyond what is, a really finite timeline, so that we can then make use of it. But I also have one question. Maybe Valerie's the one to respond to it. We always talk about an RFP, and I know we had the group come in and tell us the density numbers from how a developer would likely want to maximize the space. I'm wondering, if we put it out for an RFI, would we have the opportunity to have a different, a broader range of potential developments come into that space? that could offer us alternatives other than maximizing residential opportunities in the upper floors.
I think there's no question, but we have to know what the it is that we're putting out for an RFI.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just wondering if the end result is, is there reason to consider that
Yes, because
instead
there's
of
no
an RFP?
commitment at the end of it.
Yes, but I think that it's important for us to
There's a-
remember that the highest, best use isn't necessarily putting as much stuff as you possibly can into every square inch of Ossining.
Right.
No, I think what I think the downtown revitalization group, that project did, was to show the board, you have a couple different scenarios, all of which are, you know, feasible. Ultimately, the developer is going to clearly, you know, identify what's gonna work with their, you know, business plan. But you probably, it's, you know, what we've found in the past, that it's best to help guide the developer as to, you know, what are some of the possible scenarios that they can look at, as opposed to just keeping it completely open-ended, because sometimes you get, you know, submittals that don't fit anywhere in the realm, or promise too much, and then in the end, they end up having to, they pull back because they were assuming a lot more into the project than was gonna be possible.
I think under the circumstances, you always have the opportunity to do a hybrid
Right.
procedure, RFQ, RFP. You can combine the elements into, you know, an announcement to the world that you're seeking input and their ideas, and here's what we've done, here's our studies. So you can do a hybrid, and I think that would be probably the
It would be
something
more
to consider.
open-ended.
Right.
More
And
options.
also the point is, it is just a guide, right? And now, if we find a developer who only likes commercial but really loves the site, and doesn't want to develop residential, that can happen too. It's really a guide. It's all about what the market is gonna demand in Oxenay. Right, so if they come in and say, we don't feel that residential is necessary here because of, and we're not gonna make our, whatever.
Our money.
Money back,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, we want, it could happen, and they say, listen, we wanna do commercial, but it's about what the market is demanding, and as we know, with malls, et cetera, retail has become more and more difficult with the internet, and, you know, they're not working on these high profits as our stores, you know, in our traditional downtown. They're working on less profit margins. So, but it could happen that, you know, we could send it out and someone could come back with something, a developer could come back with something totally different than
Right.
what we have.
But this placemaking proposal is really not even focusing on how to use all of the space. It's really focusing on what would be the retail kind of draw that the people in the community in Ossining, we feel we would like to have. That's
The
really what it's
retail
all
or the
focusing.
entertainment or
Correct.
any
Right.
combination
It's a
thereof.
Public
The
space.
main floor.
Public space.
It's a
Public
public
space,
space.
probably.
The retail is going to, the market determines what retail.
What's retail,
goes,
yeah.
Right? You create an attractive, we can do many things, we can create an attractive public space. Yes, I see that, I can have my tables out there, and I can have a cafe, and we can do music. The more attractive the space looks, the higher quality retail
Yes.
we're gonna be able to attract.
Right.
And
Cool.
throughout the downtown. So
Right.
that's why it's important.
But
Right.
also, by going through these processes, both through the public input and then also the previous study, you're putting a little bit of boundaries, so that somebody doesn't come in and say, I'm gonna do a 20-story building. If you leave it with unbound, you're going to get a lot of different responses, where part of the exercise was to figure out how to construct boundaries that the village board feels relatively comfortable, you know, moving around, but then yet there is still flexibility in the types of uses that you get in the different stories, you know, but you have a general idea of the massing, and also a general idea of how you want that public space to integrate with the rest of the development.
Clear.
Mhm.
Thank
So, we go with PPS? Yes, John?
Yeah, so I guess I feel as though the PPS proposal's probably more narrow than, I feel as though you could fit the PPS thing inside the, you know, inside the PACE study. And I guess my thinking is I'd rather be more broad and then focus in later on. I mean, I know the placemaking thing is is important. But, you know, I think I'm more interested in getting, you know, a larger viewpoint of the downtown from other perspectives, placemaking being part of that. I happen to think that the way the downtown is right now is just that open space with all the parking spaces, just the way it's laid out, and what it looks like, and the way it is now. I think it's I think it's poorly utilized. I think it's underutilized. I think we still need that parking, but I think there's a lot of things we could do with the current space while we go through this, what will be a lengthy process to figure out what's happening. And I think part of what I like to hear from people is, well, what should we do with it now? You know, what could we do, you know, in a very simple way to reorganize the space as it exists now, you know, without eliminating anything, but just reorganizing it so that it could be more effective and just a better center of our village. I'm not convinced that, I mean, I like the PACE proposal better because it's broader, and I think, and as the mayor said before, one of the things that really set the tone for the work we did in the comprehensive plan, you know, was the survey. And that public outreach saying, hey, you know, we want to know what you think, and here's the survey, you know. I mean, and there's so many different ways we can do that. We can do it online, we can do it in the library. I mean, we've done this before, so we know what it's like. And it does take a lot of time, but it really sets the table for the public engagement. And I'd really like to see that part of it. This is obviously part of it too, but, you know,
Valerie?
That's right. That's just my opinion of this right now.
Do you recall who wrote the survey? It wasn't PPS, was it, or was it?
No, it was not. It was actually Patrick Cleary, and then we actually did most of the rewriting of it.
Yes.
And did the questions ourselves.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So John has just appointed you the survey guru.
Village planner and survey queen.
That was a jump shift.
We'll talk, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Because you're not busy enough.
So what direction, gentlemen, madam?
Going back a little bit, I guess, a little bit of history and how we have got to this point is sometime last year we engaged a firm to do a study for what can we do on parking lots. With that study, we selected a firm, which Tom or Richard, if someone refreshes my memory, how much did we spend on this study?
About 40.
Well,
Okay.
well, but that includes
Wait,
that
no,
includes the
No, it wasn't. It
Spring
wasn't
Street.
part. It wasn't part of that because that was an addition to that. So
Spring Street was
within that,
addition.
we went back and we saw something that we actually doing right now, which is a two-way for Spring Street, which that came out to be another 7,000. No more.
Yeah.
No. So it's more. Is it more?
$75, right?
No. Wait, I'm getting to that one. But it was another additional money that went back to, I think, like more like $60,000 to a project. To execute that part, we are spending about around $20,000 budget. So now we are about 80,000 so far. And so now, and as much as I like this proposal over here, I like 75. I like 75 a lot better than 13
Yes, but it
for some reason. But no, I think both of them are great. But I agree with John. I think this PACE study actually gives you a little bit more of an open end, and I think that gives you a little bit more to work with. So, it will be towards PACE.
Me too. Yeah, I agree.
We don't have to do either, do we?
No, we don't. We don't. We don't have to do.
Well, if we don't, then we need to develop an RFQ or whatever the hybrid
Correct.
is, and
just have the
start
developer
there.
do
Well, then maybe we just do, Valerie just goes and writes us a nice survey, and we write an RFP and an RFQ and an RFI and see what
I
happens.
think you have.
That's an option, right?
I truly think you have enough information to put together an RFI or an RFQ at this point. Any process that you deal with, any sort of, even going through an RFQ process, is going to be a very public process. And we can, you know, if you're concerned about stakeholders and stuff like that, you can definitely engage the stakeholders as part of that RFQ process, you know, especially when they're coming to present. And if you strategically, if you write the RFQ in a way that sort of really identifies what you want the developer to bring to the table and to sort of identify with Austining, I think you can really engage the public very much so, and the different boards and stakeholders.
You see, now this
through
is
this
a woman who
process.
knows how to write an RFQ.
But we also have the guidelines. We have the architectural
Right.
guidelines.
the
We have the,
architectural
we have
guidelines.
all
You
the
have
elements that could
You
provide
have
all
the
these
comprehensive
spaces.
plan which
So,
identifies the market square as a public space and stuff like that, so.
Yeah.
I mean, and when the presentations or the, you know, hopefully developers find it to be a very attractive project, we can start communicating to the public, the businesses, and telling them, this is what's happening, come to the meeting, come to the meeting. So the fact is, there's a lot of interest in this site. And people want to know what's going on because this is going to be a major piece in the community. So we're going to have interest.
Yeah,
And
sure.
people are going to be engaged. And obviously, we
But that
can
is
go
what
that
we
much
said
further.
before,
We can go that
and
much further.
we only had about 50 people at each of those meetings there, before. It was pretty much the same 50 people.
But it's okay, it was
about
50 people.
Sorry?
But it was 50
It
people.
was 50 people.
But
So-
you can put it in the school, you can put flyers in the school backpacks.
We
There's
did
Oh,
that.
yeah, tons of things we can do, and we should.
There's
So,
ways to communicate.
But-
yeah, we can use a
So-
big poster in our site as
So,
well.
Yeah.
so are we now suggesting we're going to start with a questionnaire to the public, and then we will hold public meetings beyond our work sessions to, because sometimes in our work sessions, we're really presenting something that we have invited,
It won't
and
be-
then
it won't
letting
be a
people.
work session.
correct.
Other issues.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It won't be
right.
a work session. Yeah.
It would not, it would be
No,
beyond,
no,
it would
no.
not be a work
beyond that, be
session.
public,
Yeah.
yeah.
It could be a
So-
special meeting.
Right,
I
it could
So
be-
now we're talking about village employees and the board facilitating the meetings rather than hiring somebody to do it.
Right.
I think what we originally,
Okay.
we had concerns with village staff actually facilitating the meeting, because at the very beginning, there was a discussion of having a charrette. And charrette, did you need a lot of, people, right, a lot of staff to run those types of meetings. But you can clearly have public meetings where you have less staff, which is, you know, and engage it so that it's not just a work session.
Well, you could, if you held it, for instance, on a Saturday.
Right.
And I can remember one in the gym that was on a Saturday. It was a transportation or
Right.
maybe it was some other thing. And you said, okay, from 10 to 12 is culture, and 12 to 2 is plants, and 2 to 4 is commercial, and invited people to it in that way. We would still need more people than staff that we already have, but we may not need to do all of this stuff. What we may need is ringmasters who are from this
Ringmasters.
field, but not necessarily having done all of that.
Or could be from our local business community, or our local arts community, or from
So a committee, we
activists
need to
and-
make a committee of volunteers, perhaps.
Possibly, but it's got to be somebody who has a planning background, or
Well-
some sort of background of how what is said will relate to what we want to do.
Well, I think more importantly, with any public meeting, you need to have somebody that's able to do crowd control, because very easily a public meeting can slip into something that, you know, a direction you don't want it to go.
Well,
So
John
I
will
think-
have his vest and his whistle from the traffic stuff that he's going to be doing, so he can do
So,
that.
I mean, I think, but I think what we can do is, if you would like, Ingrid and I and the village manager can sit down and we can come up with a proposal for how a public workshop would unfold if it was just dealing with the staff. Again, it would be focused on public feedback, you know, about the market square, and also what information we'd like to put into the request for proposal. And that was sort of the type of workshop we held when the first time around when we were doing the request for proposals. And we just sort of identified very generalities of things that are important to the community that we wanted to incorporate, in which I think 147, 155 Main Street which is being built, they incorporated a number of those elements and, made sure that they presented it as part of their request for proposal as to how that they are picking up on those elements.
I think it's VIP that we decide whether to have an RFP, an RFI, or an RFQ ASAP.
I think maybe what we're getting to here is put a pin in these two. Put a pin in these two proposals, and let's see whether we can't develop it without spending.
Because the board would have to, at this point, measure the value of spending
Exactly.
additional funds.
Exactly.
Correct.
Right?
All right.
So,
Yes, is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you like that, Manny, right? We just spent no money.
It's not even $75.
I like spending no money
I know.
half of the time.
Fancy
you know?
that.
Nothing of 7,500.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, John.
I would like to just thank you both for your efforts. We did ask you to do this, and you came back to us, and thank you for your thoroughness, and the contrast in the proposals is good conversation, so thank you.
Okay, great. Moving on, Valor will fill us in on CFA grant application status and potential applications.
Okay, so I know I came before the board previously, but I'm coming back before the board. I just want to let you know I'm going to be submitting 3 resolutions for the next village board meeting. So I wanted you to be aware of the amounts of money that we're going to be asking for, and then also the types of matches that this board would be clearly identifying that they would agree to. The first, I think we already spoke about tonight, was the dock, so I don't know if we really need to rehash that. But that will be a resolution for next week's village board meeting. The second is dealing with 200 Main Street. What I have done is I reached out to our roofing consultant, Russ Watsky, and had him provide a proposal to deal with the roofing replacement, dealing with the related flashings and drain connections, and he came back with an estimated construction of about $100,000 with an allowance of $20,000 for possible other drainage revisions. So I'd like to put forth for the grant $120,000 for roof repairs and drainage, and then also to put in for another $100,000. So it would be a total of like $120,000. The other 100 would be for abatement dealing with asbestos and mold. So it would be a total of $220,000, of which the village would then be responsible for matching $110,000. However, in this particular grant, since there has been some potential interest in 200 Main Street, this is something we might be able to ultimately leverage, or as a benefit to a developer that may be working with the state, that we could have them potentially
Pick up the other half.
Right.
Would there be any restrictions, though? I mean, if we went for these grants, would there be any,
There
in
is
terms of use of the property?
There, not necessarily the use, there will be probably a conservation easement by the state put onto the building
From an architectural
itself, right,
perspective?
dealing with
Yeah,
historic
okay.
preservation easement.
Well, that works in our favor.
Oh, yeah.
it's a good
No,
thing.
that's,
Okay, what else we got?
And considering in your procurement policy, so you already have procurement policies where it identifies, the public-private partnerships dealing, so we could make sure that, whatever ultimately, if that ever does come to fruition, that, with the Corporation Council, would work it into language into an agreement.
Okay.
But either way, this particular grant would say that the Village of Austining would be matching it, and then clearly, if for some reason nothing does come to fruition with 200 Main Street, which, at this point in time, I don't think that's gonna be the case, but then the village would at least be able to stabilize the building.
Good.
Or at least to
Right.
some extent.
yeah.
And then the third is dealing with the Indian Brook Water Filtration Plant, the expansions of the water drinking water capacity. And that, I'm waiting for final cost estimates from the engineering consultant, and then they're supposed to be handing them to me sometime probably by Friday. But we would like to put in the maximum, which is 20% of the total cost. So it's somewhere, my guess is probably gonna be somewhere between like maybe $3-4 million, something like that. For, and again, I don't know if we would get all that money, if some of that money. The state also said that this is a potential grant that it might put it on the radar this year, and then they might have us resubmit again next year. So, but it's something that I think is important, and we should probably go for that.
Mm-hmm.
When would you be hearing back about these grants?
These are all gonna be September, and we were told by the Empire State Development that since it's an election year, the governor definitely wants to make his grant announcements in early fall.
Along with the $68.20 rebate checks from the 2% cap, yes.
Yeah. Well, good.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
2 resolutions for next week.
There'll be 3 resolutions.
You will have all of that information?
Yes, I
That'd be
will.
great.
It's just
Okay.
I don't have it this evening. I think Andy's always anticipated somewhere in the realm of like 15 to 18 million, but, you know,
Yep.
Okay.
thank you.
We received, the mayor received a note, a request from Pace Land Use Law Center discussing a grant application they were going to do for greener, cleaner communities. So I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Yeah, this is actually another one of those coalition application things that we've been cooperating with them. It's a shame Valerie left, because I want to make sure that before we agree to support a grant application, that it's not competing with the grant applications of the village. I don't think it is. It's a different category. But I think it's a good thing for us to do.
Yeah, I agree. We all got that.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I redrafted a little bit?
Please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'll just verify with Valerie the question that you raised.
That would be great.
Okay, great. The next item is a request for a letter of support for Energize New York. Trustee Garrity.
Yes, which is also a grant application. We're all familiar with the Energize program. In fact, Ossining has been one of the leaders among Westchester, where the Energize New York program was launched by NWIAC, which of course we're all familiar with, and as Bill Hanauer is well aware, the village was a charter member. And this was the first big program that NWIAC put out, and it is now looking to expand. As John makes mention anytime he talks about it, he lets you know that the funding for the Energize program may not be here forever, and that's because it comes from grants like this, and this is a different kind of grant that they're going for now, and it would broaden it to really be much broader region than that it currently is in northern Westchester, and so that would just benefit all the more people in New York State
Yeah,
to
we
be
should
able to
do
have
this.
energy efficiency upgrades.
Yeah,
And
we should do this.
we've benefited from it, and I hope others can as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's-
Draft that one up as well?
Thank you.
Okay, great. The next item is a discussion with respect to parking and resident observation request. We had a request from, similar to how we had a request from a resident on Cedar Place, and we dealt with the situation there on Lincoln. We had a request from a resident on Meadowbrook, and the gist of it was there was concern about parking that was permitted on the north side of the street. Following that, we go out there with the DPW, the police were involved, everybody sort of reviewed the situation. So the suggestion now would be to provide no parking on the northerly side of Meadowbrook from the intersection with Cedar, and to allow parking on the southerly side between here and about there. And the gist of it would be the police feel strongly, God bless you, and the DPW as well, that without the cars parked here, but parked on this side, there'll be easier clearance, and you have better visibility, et cetera. So,
Good to do.
sure. And
Can you recommend a process if there are community members that would like to have particular areas like, exactly like this, looked at where there might be, poor visibility? and
yeah,
maybe
I mean, they
limited
should contact the
parking?
village manager's office, 941-3554. Basically, with this particular situation, because it was changing from one side to another, we have a team effort. So as I said, it's the police. I go out there as well. I consult Corporation Counsel as necessary, and also the DPW goes out there because they are actually implementing. So that's basically the way, it works best. The same situation held with respect to Cedar and Lincoln. That was another citizen complaint. I think it came to the mayor. We went out there, we made the observation, and it actually came to a resolution during the last snowstorm, and we were able to effectuate a change.
So we're saying do this. I think.
Yeah, this is good, and I think a local law's been circulated, or you can start the
Yes.
process for
I
next
circulated
next
the
week.
law, and I have a proposed resolution calling for a public hearing on your next.
Good.
The public hearing would be on June 18th.
Good.
All right,
Sounds
so
good.
all the stuff after that is going to go to general code. It has
Yes.
to be changed
Yeah.
and everything else.
Yeah, you go through the whole local law process.
And the signs.
And I know we had another request, sort of impromptu on email. If you just give me a little time to look at it and talk to the DPW, and then we'll try to get back to you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's the one for Sierra.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and
All right,
because
thank you.
coincidentally, that's why I'm suggesting, and thank you for asking, I had actually already had collateral conversations with the resident as well, and also with the business owner, so there's a little, so just give me another 2 weeks, let me talk to the DPW, and I'll get back.
I just want to bring up something I brought up before, we've discussed before, and I've now gotten not only residents in the area, but now I've gotten a couple of police people say to me that they are very concerned about the new building at 105 Croton Avenue, blocking the view of people in an already dangerous intersection, or they feel
Linden.
was a dangerous.
Yes.
Linden and
Linden.
Croton.
What can
Now,
mitigate that?
we've talked about the problem of putting any sort of stop sign or light there, which is that you have really stagnant traffic at certain times of day. But the question is it tolerable to have stagnant traffic, or is it tolerable to have more accidents?
Well, the thing is, I spoke to the chief of police about it, and one of the suggestions that he made is that the people come out on 134 where there's a light. That's, I mean, if there's a problem with people coming out there, they can come out where there's a light. That's one suggestion that he made.
Where people come out from.
They're coming out from Linden onto Croton, right?
Yeah.
So
Not
if
from
they
my
wanted,
house.
I'm sorry?
Not from my house.
No, it's just that intersection, no matter which of the side streets there, you have the two streets that meet Croton there.
No, I'm saying if you're parked at Linden going south
Yeah.
at the Croton intersection, in lieu of going I'm just relating what I was told.
Yeah.
I mean, again, give us some opportunity to look into it, if you will. There are a number of things that you could do there. One of the things that comes to my mind that probably wouldn't be that popular would be you could say right turn only. That would eliminate,
Right.
you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yes,
You know,
and you're right.
so,
it
I
would be
mean, but these
unpopular
are-
but safer.
These are police matters. All I'm saying is that when I discussed it with the chief, his, suggestion was that in lieu of coming to that intersection, that people come to the other intersection. That's his suggestion, but practically speaking, people will still come there. But, let us look at it, because short of a light, all you can do is sign it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. Then
Okay.
we got, well, yeah.
All right.
all right, great. Update on the proposed landlord registration local law. Lori Lee?
Okay. I looked at this further. I have started drafting a proposed registration form, but it's not in a place where I would be proud enough to let it see the light of day yet. So I'd like to bring that back at the next work session. But in the meantime, I wanted to show you some of the areas where I was just tightening up the language. And I would also like to double check in the definitions that we're not running afoul of an inconsistency. So I did shoot an email to your building and planning departments to double check what the best definition to use for the dwelling units. As if you recall, the purpose of this was to establish a registry for rental properties of 2 units and above. And you can see that I've clarified that a rental property that would qualify for the need to register would also include a rental property where the owner would occupy one of the 2 units. I just wanted to be sure that it was clear that this doesn't just catch up those absentee landlords, but it also requires us to have the kind of registration information on file for owner-occupied properties as well. And you can see that what I've done in the registration of rental property in section X3, because I haven't assigned it a chapter number yet. We could do a sliding scale depending if the property changes hands. We could add in the fee schedule that it would be equivalent to an annual registration initial, so we could put 25 in there. You could require people to submit a minor amount if they were making changes to the document. I mean, there's many ways to go about this. I did do a lot more research trying to find out what other forms of the community's using, and also what registration amounts and fees other communities are using. I was able to find a few examples, but I did also send some calls out to my fellow Corp Council roundtable members, and I'm hoping to get back some more input from them as well. So this is where we are in the process. This is, again, just the landlord registration
Portion of it.
portion.
Have you discussed XXX-5B with anyone in particular?
In terms of the penalties, this language is taken directly from the current Mount Kisco law, so I haven't spoken with them directly, but I do.
No, I wasn't really referring to them.
Oh,
Yeah, well,
no, I
thought-
haven't discussed it with anyone locally, if that's your question.
I thought we were going to put something here that, in penalties for offenses, restating that if that the form is a notarized document, and that failure to be truthful subjects someone to criminal penalties.
That would actually be on the registration form itself. The samples that I have that section when you do your certification and you sign before a notary. The language is on the form itself, and it references, because criminal prosecution is not in our purview, but it's in the purview of the
So
DA.
we can't have it here.
No.
Okay, that's just checking.
We couldn't add a crime.
The
We
next
can't add a
thing is-
crime that you can't enforce.
Is this going to be able to be done online? And the reason I ask,
It's possible we can do a fillable form.
a fillable form, and what would be wonderful when we did a fillable form, if the landlord has no changes. I've had the same tenant in my house for 5 years, and nothing has changed in 5 years.
Right.
Well, she's gotten older.
Lucky you.
By about 5 years. And if every year I could just check no change.
Yes, that's one of the boxes that I've actually put on the registration form
And then
itself.
I wouldn't have to fill out anything else.
We must be thinking along the same lines, because I did put at the top, renewal, no change,
Yeah, oh,
and
good.
still the certification would have to happen. The problem is, you can fill the form online, but you can't submit the form online because you need an original notary stamp. You'd have to
Right.
give up the ability to notarize a signature.
My suggestion would be then that you could submit it online if there is in fact no change, but everybody else would have to.
But you would still need to notarize your signature.
Maybe you wouldn't, I'm saying. Maybe. Really?
But then there's nothing enforceable.
Yeah.
Ah, good point, Victoria.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where we are with this. I'd like to bring it back again with a sample form and some suggestions on the fees, and we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
In regards to the fees, what is Mount Kisco? What do they do?
$75.
I have that question posed to them, so I'm waiting
Because
to
I
hear
remember
back.
the application is always the same amount, no matter what. I haven't seen.
Correct.
It varies with.
I guess
if
what
they
I'd
sell a
like to
house.
do is, if there are no changes, and you're just simply notarizing the form and sending it back, it's sort of an incentive thing, I'm just looking at the possibility of a sliding scale. I'm looking at the possibility,
No, I mean,
say you
to
own
me,
multiple
which is-
properties, the first one's 25, the additionals are blah, blah, whatever. So that's all I'm doing.
Okay.
Trying to make it a little user-friendly and incentivize people to participate.
I like it. Yeah, what do we got next?
Okay, the next item is a update on the capital project report. It's capital project updates. There are, many of these have actually stayed in place as we knew them. I just wanted to mention some of the ones that have been updated recently that you're aware of, including on the first page that the generator at the Rodriguez Operations Center, the bid was awarded on May 21st, 2014 to the selected electric company, and that will be going forward. There was a consolidation on page 2 with respect to streets and sidewalks, and with the extra money that was received from the winter recovery, $23,000, brings the total available balance available to the village for street projects this year of approximately $209,000. Among the streets that have been designated following the completion of the Chilmark Shopping Center would be Pleasantville Road. And I want to go out with Paul and look as well and bring back some of the, depending, I don't know what funds are going to be available, but we're going to do sort of an inventory of where we are in terms of the worst streets, which we tried to identify some of them last year. So we'll bring them back to you. That routinely takes place in the fall, so there's time. But in the meanwhile, when we do that, we'll have an opportunity to seek your input too in terms of the streets that you see most in need of attention. The other item is, I'm sorry, what's that? There's a number of items in here that are going to be closed, and Tom has already done some of that. Community Development, Sing Sing Museum, the meetings continue. They're also planning a fundraiser that's coming up shortly. We've had a number of emails, discussions with HHRT, Jerry Fiala, about a possible application for some grant funding. I asked Christina, we're going to have a meeting with Christina, myself, Valerie, and hopefully Jerry, so we can see what the possibility is on that. Because the village has already prioritized its own grants, and it seems to be more regional, and there could be a match. We might go with HHRT and see if we can do a consolidated application with them and the village supporting it. We've spoken tonight about the Kilbrook sewer project and the connection to the community center, and also some of the other aspects of that, and we'll speak about that further at an upcoming meeting. The playground, the upgrade of the playgrounds, the multiple playground projects has already been approved by budget resolution. The walkway extension we discussed this evening, the historic signs are still underway. We discussed as well the upcoming two-way Spring Street project, and as soon as I get some numbers from Paul, I'll shoot them over to you, and you can tell me if they look good or not, or we can discuss it further.
What's going on with the historic signs? It seems like we're all going to be historic by the time they get here.
That's why they're historic.
Right. I mean, Valerie recently said that they're mostly completed. I need to get a further update from her.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Let me look into that again and get back to you.
Thank you.
My understanding is that all the language is complete.
Right.
Oh, good.
Mine as well.
It's all been edited. It's all...
So Spring Street we spoke about, and there's a number of projects that have been closed. We also have the generator project at the Indian Brook treatment facility has already been approved as well. And then we have a number of projects that have been completed for closure. So
Great. Grazie.
okay, the last item on the agenda this evening is just, I'll be brief because I think I've shared with you previously about many of these items, but I'll just speak a little bit about some of the activities that have been going on in the manager's office over the last month. So as I've reported to the board and in public meetings, over the course of the last month, we've seen much increased interest expressed in various village properties. It's been received through our downtown development manager as well as directly through brokers. I shared with you that there are at this time 3 interested parties in the 200 Main Street former bank building property, and they will be invited to the upcoming work session in June to make their presentations to the board, and then you can determine how you wish to proceed on those. We've also met with 2 other potential developers that are interested in the former DPW property, and we received an inquiry from a large out-of-state developer who specializes in redevelopment of existing parcels with older buildings on it. We're waiting confirmation of interest and formalized submissions from all of these individual parties to bring them back to the village board. So we don't have anything further tangible to report at this time. I will say that, there's been a lot of interest in, I think one of the nicest thing was we met with a real estate broker a week ago. We had met with him before, but his principal didn't come in, so we met with him again, and he came in with his principal. And I said to him, how were you drawn to the village of Ossining? How did you come? And he goes, there's just a lot of buzz out there that there's a lot going on in the village of Ossining and very progressive, friendly atmosphere in which to do business. So that was that was totally unsolicited, so I appreciated that. We've had several meetings with Avalon Corp to finalize the completed status of their site. As you know, we went out and did field inspections for them to do an alteration of the trail and to suggest to them relocating it so that it would loop around and rejoin the Crawbucky, which I believe is what they've adopted. We also had an issue out there about removal of fencing, and so we're working with them so that when the lands are turned over to the village, it's one unified parcel, which will roll right into the Crawbucky Preserve. The village tax group continues to meet to examine village sources of income and expense. We've looked at a number of items, including bonded indebtedness, employees, and 5-year capital project plan. And we're going to continue to meet and see whether issues we would like to look at as we look towards the 2015 budget process to begin in October. Recently, we met with the Verizon representatives on the outstanding contract that the village has with Verizon Fios and any potential issues that we might have. In one of our field inspections at the Kilbrook, actually, Paul pointed out to me a spool of wire, I guess, that had been on Central Avenue, he said, for years. So I reached out to Verizon and brought that to their attention, as well as a couple of some of these split poles, and they actually removed the spool on Central Avenue, so that was a good thing. And one of the poles was removed, and I forwarded another one. So, I mean, they are showing some willingness to cooperate, so that was good. Excuse me, I had conversations with attorneys from the state of New York regarding the village request for state participation in the generator replacement at Indian Brook, and all indications are that the state will participate in funding a part of that project. They are going to send us down some type of a contract and an agreement that we will have to look over and whatever, but our indication is that they will participate, since Sing Sing is really a 10% user of village water. Have had a number of miscellaneous personnel matters, normal meetings with department heads, director of personnel. We engaged in termination negotiations with an employee who's no longer with us. And following up on that, met with incoming employee on terms and conditions and their availability for employment. Met with department heads on pending matters affecting their departments and interdepartmental matters. Met with the village engineer in finalization of the options that the board is considering in connection with the Kilbrook Sewer Reconstruction Project. Council and I attended the PACE Roundtable for Corporation Council, which was very helpful, and hear about how other communities are dealing with issues of housing and buildings, structures, and maintenance. Met with the village engineer on a number of matters, including the Kilbrook. I already mentioned that. Of course, meeting with individual board members as necessary on items of individual concern. I attended the Town of Ossining tax assessment presentation, which I thought was very informative at the library. We recently attended, the entire village community attended the annual workplace violence presentation, along with other department heads, sponsored by our insurance facilitator. Continue to work with council on reviewing local laws to address housing and occupancy issues. Recently met with the village prosecutor and the attorney for defendant on several pending matters to look towards possible disposition. Attended the quarterly intermunicipal meeting with representatives from the Village of Ossining Town, Ossining Union Free School District, and other invested communities, representatives and agencies. Participated in interviews for participants in the Downtown Events Committee, including this evening. We met another new resident, so that was really very rewarding. Met with School Superintendent Sanchez and the Treasurer. We meet regularly now to share items of concern, and we made several suggestions of how we might actually assist each other. Recently, I met with the Village of Ossining Auditor and the Treasurer's Office on the preliminary audit findings preparatory to returning to the Village Board for closing report on calendar year 2013. That should be coming up shortly. We should have that in June. Attended meeting with the Village of Ossining representatives and the Town of Ossining representatives on the Parks and Recreation IMA for review of the existing agreement and discussions of items of concern for future codification of a new agreement, and we'll be meeting again, I believe, next week. Chaired the monthly meeting of the OEM with a representative of the County of Westchester present to discuss hazard local laws that they were looking to implement, which will cover the Village of Ossining as well as other county communities. Routinely chairing the twice monthly staff meetings and meet with and speak to constituents on matters of individual concern. So, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
And on that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Well, If there are no further issues,
Well, I just had one thought, Richard, when, when you were talking about the worst streets, would that be, because we have $209,000 or so left to do the repaving projects, would that be a fun project to open up to the public for people to sort of nominate their own favorite worst street for consideration? Maybe they could send in a photo?
If we had 209 million instead of 209,000.
Well, I mean, you'd still have to make decisions. It's just, it would, you know, might be a way, people complain a lot about potholes, a
Put it on
lot.
a web blast.
So,
I think it's a great idea.
The thing is, with
Nominate
honestly,
the
I don't know, I don't have the bottom line dollar, but I think Pleasantville Road alone is going to use up most of what we have available. So, but not to say that anything is beyond the realm.
Right now,
We don't do that
it looks
for-
like Beirut.
We don't do that formal process like you had mentioned, but DPW keeps a running list of complaints from residents. So let's say you lived on a street and every one of your neighbors and, you know, calls about it, so it does get some concern. And they also, it's kind of weighted with how much traffic's on that street and how long does it look like that. So we try to do it as fair as possible. They also coordinate it with cement lining projects, or if we know that there's a pending Con Ed. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and
there's
it's also
the
our own
degree of-
guys.
The
that-
degree to which the actual roadbed is compromised. There may be a pothole that's really bad on one street, but another street may have a really compromised roadbed, and that goes.
sure, all the decision-making could still be exactly the same. The point would be just that people complain about potholes a lot and the condition of their streets, and perhaps letting the public know that while there are 26,000 people in the village using the streets, that they might have some insights that we might not be noticing because we don't live on every street.
Right. It's a good idea. In fact, I was actually going to bring this up with you after the meeting. I've gotten my neighbors knocking on my door. Hunter Street is the employee entrance road to the prison, and so 6 times a day, there's a zillion people going up and down my block, going to and from work, as well as the people who live there. And I've lived on Hunter Street since 2001, and when I got there, it looked like Beirut, and now it looks like Beirut, except all these years later, of still having the same potholes. And small children can fall in the holes and disappear. They're so big.
But I think Hunter Street is going to have some of the cement relining, right?
Have some what?
There's cement relining for the water
The
line.
water.
Oh,
So
the water.
Yeah.
I
So
remember
if
the water.
yeah,
My
so if
nice
that-
brown chunky water I've had this whole time.
Yeah, no.
And that's on the agenda for what year?
That's coming up soon. I think you just recently
Been hearing
approved
about it.
it.
It's this year's agenda.
This year?
I think it's this year.
Yeah.
Really?
So if the,
Holy. No. We'll take. We would love to have clean. I'm sure
Well,
my.
actually,
my
they kind of go
neighbors-
hand in hand, don't they? Doesn't he get a new road because he gets new water? Yeah.
We would love
One's this
the people. I
construction
think the people who
year,
live on Hunter
another-
Street will be
the
glad to
other
hear
one's
that they're going to
following.
actually, for the first time, have potable water. That's great. Thank you.
So
Okay.
Hunter Street is off the table.
Okay, so is there anything else that's on the agenda?
Nope.
Okay, motion to go, what, are we in executive session? No?
Oh,
Nothing.
Nothing. Then really.
Good,
For you to
okay.
home?
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
need a motion to adjourn.
You want to stay?
Motion to adjourn. So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night. This is the end of this work session, and we will be seeing you again next week, I hope, at the legislative session at the courthouse on Wednesday evening at 7:30. Good night.
Also,